Hello Canada, welcome back to another edition of the Canadian Citizen Journal. I'm your host, alias Tagai. We have a pile of news to go through, as well as some out of Canada craziness and surprises. There's been a couple major breaking news here. There was some jabs. 5 people were injured in the early hours this morning in Winnipeg. I haven't got a actual news clip. I went through it because it was actually streaming. I could hear it in the background on one of the TV sets in my actual public. Like, what I got is I got like a whole bunch of different TVs, and then as I'm doing like research outside of my studio, of course I'm constantly listening to everything going on. And then even though 2 or 3 of the outlets had actually shown a small clip of it, when I went back and actually tried to search them, it seems as though they've kind of omitted that part, and I'm having a really hard time finding it. So it was a short clip anyways. I did get just the actual press part of it from City News, which we'll go over, as well as a couple guys that were trapped early this morning in a Toronto tunnel. We're getting news now that it's 2 injured. We're gonna clip on that. We're gonna have an update on the fires, and just a whole pile of other stuff that's just going on Canada-wide, and then a little bit about this Hamas Free Palestine guy who decided to make up a flamethrower and some Molotov cocktails and try to hurt some people, and actually successfully did, and how it's actually affecting what's going on to the Jewish community in Canada. And we just got a massive amount to kind of go through here today. Let's just get right started, right off the hop here with this whole jab that has gone on in Manitoba. So 5 hospitalized after fight on Mountain Avenue, says the Winnipeg Police. Winnipeg Police say 5 people were taken to hospital with injuries after a fight involving a group of people early Monday morning. The Winnipeg Police Services say 3 people were hospitalized in critical condition and 2 in stable condition after 4 a.m. All are now in stable condition. Authorities were called to Mountain Ave near Andrew Street for the report of 2 people jabbed outside. They arrived to find 5 people injured. Police say there is no risk to public safety, calling it an isolated incident. The WPS Major Crimes Unit is investigating. Now, it does sound like this is gang related. And being the fact that they haven't shown any pictures or any names, you can pretty much imagine who did it. No surprise. Anyways, wow, that's another major text coming in. That's a busy morning. Now, we're just going to kind of play the clip. This is what's going on due to the mess that happened down in the States this morning because of what happened in Colorado.
Hi, Nathan. Yes, well, we're live right now outside the Promenade Mall in Thornhill, where community members have been sharing with us their sentiments about the attack in Colorado. Every Sunday since October 7th, 2023, community members here have participated in the Run for Their Lives, walking the perimeter of the mall, calling for the return of hostages held by Hamas. These run-walk events are held around the world, and as we've learned, it was a Run for Their Lives chapter in Boulder, Colorado that was targeted yesterday by a man wielding a makeshift flamethrower and Molotov cocktails. A 45-year-old is accused of yelling "Free Palestine" during the attack that injured 8. This latest incident comes amidst a recent uptick in violence against the Jewish community in the United States, including 2 murders outside a Jewish museum in Washington and an arson attack on Pennsylvania's Governor's Josh Shapiro's home on Passover. As a result, both Toronto and York Regional Police have issued statements saying they're monitoring the situation closely, adding that out of an abundance of caution, we continue to maintain a heightened presence at places of worship and faith-based community locations across the region. We stand in solidarity with all communities impacted by acts of violence.
Initial reaction was definitely shock and mortified. Scared. I mean, we bring this program, this Run for Their Lives, every Sunday here, and it could have easily have been our community, myself, my husband, anybody.
We look at the situation that happened in Boulder. We also look at things that have happened elsewhere, for instance, in Washington just last week. And if we look at all these different events that have been happening across Canada, if we look at them in isolation, we miss the big picture of the pattern which has been occurring and growing around the world of this hatred and these attacks.
Now, police say they will have a heightened and visible presence at community centers, places of worship, and schools, saying that the safety and well-being of residents is their top priority. Reporting live, I'm Janice Golding. Now back to...
Yeah, scary times. And, you know, this is all being blown because you have useless politicians like the fascist government we have here in Canada, and others around the world like Keir Starmer and Macron, and which we're going to deal with Macron because there's been some major protests going on in France. Now, it all started because of a sports event. And this is going to be my first members only video. I'm going to follow it up with after this, the free episode here, because we've got like stuff that happened in Russia with the Ukraine. I can't show this stuff. And I believe there are people out there who would really like to be able to actually see firsthand what's going on. And like, as you notice, I'm trying to correct a lot of my words instead of using, you know, the whole, I'm using, you know, different words to describe things, because I'm getting just plummeted through the use of algorithms on this and other social media outlets. So I'm just going to have to try really hard, and you're going to have to bear with me, especially if you're a new subscriber. I push the edge because the whole reason I created this channel was to get the facts out. Sorry, just the facts. And it's incredibly hard to do. And this country, Canada, is one of the worst. It is one of the most heavily censored countries on the planet. Yes, after 10 years of a hardcore socialist turned semi-fascist government, it's not surprising. And these social media companies have to abide by the government's rules. Now, anyways, I'm going to deal with those a little bit later. I am going to give kind of a brief clip on what's going on in Paris. I'm just going to avoid the Ukraine thing altogether. Like I said, I'm going to put that on a members only video here this evening. As for this, let's just get back to, in Canada, the wildfire updates. And this is, you know, it's an incredibly sad thing. The worst part is you have 3 provinces who have called for help, 2 in the state of an emergency, where the federal government said, okay, we'll send the military in, and our military can't even help Canadians. Our equipment is so I'll get there. Let's just run through this first, and then I'll show you the article of just how bad our military really is. And not our military. Our personnel are great. What few we have are great. It's the government's fault that our military is falling apart.
Tonight, escaping raging wildfires by plane, train, even military helicopter. But after a chaotic and stressful few days, many are worried about where they'll go now. Hotels across the region are at capacity, and that means more evacuees are being forced to seek shelter far away from home. Some are even being sent as far south as Niagara Falls. Other evacuees are facing long and difficult drives because highways are closed. There are about 150 wildfires spread across Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, and British Columbia. Almost half are burning out of control. Strong winds and a lack of rain in the forecast mean the situation could get even worse. And as Sam Sampson shows us, it's pushing evacuees to their limits.
All weekend, military helicopters and planes brought stranded Manitobans to safety.
I'm glad I'm here, but I'm very tired. We're all very tired. All we want is a good shower.
Serena Moore escaped Puckatawagan, a remote First Nations community where thousands were stuck for days.
It was very hard, and there's lots of smoke. You couldn't even go out, and staying inside was worse.
I'm happy my family's out.
Some of those airlifted out then got on buses or trains to seek refuge in Winnipeg.
keeping the family together was our priority, and keeping calm was the second.
As many as 17,000 people have fled their homes in Manitoba, and room is running out. First Nations leaders say many have nowhere to stay in Winnipeg since hotels are booked up. They're urging the province to force hotels to make room for evacuees.
And it's really sad to see, our children having to sleep on floors. People are sitting, waiting in hallways, waiting outside.
Manitoba's premier says about 3,500 evacuees are going to southern Ontario to free up space in Winnipeg.
Oh my God.
Fires raging in Saskatchewan forced more communities to evacuate over the weekend. Timber Bay's fire truck has been out of commission for years, so before fleeing, community members scattered hoses near hydrants to help remaining firefighters.
Wind's going to shift from the east later on this afternoon, so we better get ready and be vigilant, I guess.
Fires have forced about 4,500 people out of their homes in Alberta. Recent cool weather helped crews, but the province says it's still too dangerous to go home. The smoke from these fires has traveled as far south as Florida, but continued to choke those closest to the flames, with some in northern Manitoba voluntarily leaving their homes just to find clean air to breathe. Sam Sampson, CBC News, Edmonton.
As you saw in Sam's report, evacuees from those remote communities in Manitoba are arriving first in the PAW. And that's where the CBC's Josh Crabb is. Josh, you're at the airport where evacuees are being brought in on military aircraft. Tell us what you've been seeing.
Ian, right behind me, you can see water bombers and a Hercules aircraft here to take evacuees from the PAW to Winnipeg. For the past several days, this airport has been a hub of activity with helicopters and airplanes landing with loads of evacuees. It's mainly been the Royal Canadian Air Force, but other agencies are assisting as well. This is where people from Puckatawagan are landing with nothing but a bag full of clothes and personal items. They've been telling me they're arriving tired, hungry, and stressed after waiting days to be rescued.
Now, I haven't seen any news reports yet about the truth of what is going on. So I'm going to break this. Through all of these different social media outlets, I have been contacted, well, not necessarily contacted, but called out on certain videos and stuff that I've done on other networks, and as well as seen through other posts like X, YouTube, and others, where they're talking about how there's no military. They've been waiting to be airlifted out. As the fires are getting closer, these people can't breathe. The smoke is that bad. And they're supposed to be evacuated yesterday, a day and a half ago. And there's nothing. And then I'm reading all of these other posts where they're saying they're actually contacting third-party outlets because we don't have the military equipment that actually is running. They're all broken. Nothing. They're not saying this. Canada is, man, this Liberal Party has just destroyed our nation. Now, here is pretty much the only post, the only news clip I've found. And it doesn't even really bring into effect I'm talking over 500 different posts I have read through 7 or 8 different social media platforms where people are screaming, saying, we've been stuck here, we've been promised that the military is supposed to pick us up. And either they're still there in this smoke, or they've landed and they're posting, thanks to so-and-so Airways, for them coming in with their helicopters, and they're very small and having to do 4 lifts in order to get, 2 or 3 families out of an area that should have been able to have been done in 1 lift if we had, if our military helicopters were actually working. But they're not. Why? Well, I'll show you. Canadian military Cyclone helicopters were grounded for 27 days in May. Questions emerged in late April about whether various spare parts for the aircraft were potentially in use beyond their service life. The Canadian military Cyclone helicopters weren't flying for 27 days in May due to a lack of spare parts, and only one of them is now able to take to the skies. Canada has 26 of the shipborne maritime helicopters, with a final one slated for delivery this year. The $5.8 billion fleet is normally used to provide air support for the Royal Canadian Navy. Their missions include surface-to-subsurface surveillance, search and rescue, and anti-submarine warfare. On May 1st, the commander of 1 Canadian Air Division ordered a temporary pause of flying operations of the CH-148 Cyclone fleet after questions emerged in late April about whether various spare parts of the aircraft were potentially in use beyond their service life. The temporary pause to flying operations was lifted as of May 27th, Kind Sadiku, who speaks for the Department of National Defense. Certain aircraft components have a defined service life to ensure continued safety and airworthiness. Because using parts beyond their defined service life would pose risks to safety and personnel and equipment, the decision was made to temporarily pause flight operations until certainty was regained. D&D, the military, and Sikorsky, which manufacture the helicopters, have been working together to identify potential parts of concern. This includes components of the Cyclone's landing gear, tail rotor, drive shaft flange, and auxiliary power unit, as well as engine parts. This goes on and on. The Cyclone fleet is currently facing some challenges such as aging data link systems as well as sensor and other capabilities that are overdue for important upgrades, he said. Specific details, however, cannot be provided for reasons of operational security. Blah, 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 blah. People, we are leaving. There are people stranded in these fire zones that our own military's useless equipment can't help. How are we ever going to portray ourselves as being some type of a help globally if we can't even help ourselves? And now, I'd love to be able to show you a lot of these, but I'm not going to dox people, because if these people do, they're already going out putting with their names, putting this type of stuff out. I would be afraid in this apocalyptic world that we now live in, thanks to the liberal socialist government picking winners and losers and prosecuting anybody who goes against them. It would be a crying shame for me to dox them, which is what would happen. They would use these clips, use these people, and they would either be fired from the jobs, persecuted online, you know, all the rest of the hate speech, social media, blah, blah, blah. You can't even speak truth to power. Our country is so broken. It's just so bad. Now, I'm going to get back to the rest of this, where the media should be talking about what I just said, but they won't, because they're too busy protecting the government that pays for their bills.
There's tables of food and drinks for them to grab. Then they have to figure out where to go next, some even going as far as southern Ontario because the province is running out of hotel space. Many are being transported to southern Manitoba by train or bus. There's also a large-scale evacuation of Pimicikamak Cree Nation, northeast of where we are. The Armed Forces is using Hercules aircraft to move people from that community. Meantime, the city of Flin Flon, which is home to 5,000 people and has also been evacuated, is also continuing the firefight. Local officials have said that no structures have been lost, but this wind isn't helping. Ian.
Thanks, Josh. Let's move now to Saskatchewan and the hamlet of Evacuees, one of the northern communities facing an evacuation order. And that's where Alexander Silberman is tonight. What are you hearing from evacuees?
Ian, I'm hearing a lot of fear and frustration. This road behind me is now closed. At times it was possible to pass through with an escort, but fire has made it too dangerous. Upwards of 8,000 people have now evacuated in Saskatchewan, and they're going through some stressful experiences. There's limited road access in the north, so people are often taking back roads in poor conditions to make it to safety. There's also widespread power outages, impacting gas stations' ability to pump gas, and cell service is down in many areas. And there's fewer and fewer places to stay. Hotels in Prince Albert and Saskatoon are full, and people are being told to drive 5 hours to Regina. And the province is warning without rain, more people could be forced to leave their homes in the coming days. Ian?
Alexander Silberman in Evacuees, Saskatchewan this evening. And as Saskatchewan...
Now, you would think that when it came to the immigration crisis and how fast they were throwing up these portable shelters, that we'd be able to supply them for Canadians? Why are none of these being put up? You really have to question the mental capacity of the people who are running this country. The fact that they got reelected, I don't know a single person who isn't shocked, like just absolutely shocked that somebody actually scratched an X beside a Liberal candidate. It makes no sense at all. So where are all these structures that were dormant, the wasted hundreds upon hundreds of millions of dollars for all of these immigrants? And what about all of these shelters that were put up through the Wuhan scare that have been now collapsed, that were empty anyways? Where are they? The West is just, we are treated so crappy in the prairies. It's unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. And again, mainstream. It's just... If they don't show it, they make it look like the East is actually doing something for the prairie provinces. They don't care. All they care about is your revenue, your sweat equity. That's all they care about. They don't care about you. They never will. It's all fake promises. It's just so sickening. It's just so sickening. Now, we're going to move on to some more news here and kind of get through this quickly. Now, where are we? This is the collapsed tunnel in Toronto.
We're following developing news. 2 workers have been injured in an industrial accident near Edmund Avenue and Weston Road. This is a live look from the CTV News chopper over the scene. Police say a wall collapsed in the area shortly after 11:30 a.m. 2 workers have become stuck in the soil as a result of the collapse. Of course, we're going to keep on following that story. Meantime, people are often told to trust your gut. And
so, yeah, there hasn't been any updates on that. I've been kind of allowing it to cycle through here. It sounded like there were a lot more trapped in there earlier, but this is the kind of the latest feed that came out, and they're saying so far it sounds like there were only 2. Still kind of a very scary thing. I'm sure there'll be OHS out there shaking their heads wondering how this is even possible to happen. Yeah, pretty sad times. And moving right along.
In Calgary today, an autopsy will be performed after a man allegedly fell from a high-rise balcony, landing on a vehicle owned by a couple from Edmonton.
A little surreal. I'm digesting it. But like I say, we'll figure out a way home.
The caved-in car and shattered glass was discovered outside an apartment building in downtown Calgary yesterday morning. Calgary police say they received a call at about 5 o'clock in the morning about a man who fell from a balcony. The man was alive when paramedics arrived, but died in hospital. Carol Roberts and her husband were visiting the city for a conference and were planning to drive back to Edmonton yesterday.
Here for an amazing event. Did not expect it to end this way, but I guess in reality, this is the things that happen. I just hope and pray for the family that I just offer peace and prayer, and we'll figure this out on our own.
The aunt of the man who died tells CTV he was 22 years old from Siksika First Nation and a talented hockey player. Calgary police want anyone with information to contact them or Crime Stoppers.
Sad. Very, very sad. And Quebec.
Surveillance footage obtained by CTV News shows 6 individuals attempting to break into a cafe. They appear to smash the glass door and then enter with what appears to be gas tanks. Seconds later, the place goes up in flames. The group runs At least one is on fire.
Now, I don't know if you noticed this, but the one guy is actually filming what's going on. I'm going to look into this. I got to find out the actual cafe. I'm wondering if this is another hate crime, another anti-Semitic hate crime. This could very well be owned by a Jewish family or along that likes, because this is out of control in Canada. Jews are fleeing our country. That should be a warning sign that we have problems, and it wasn't here before. Not that it wasn't. It was a minute, very rare occurrence 10 years ago. And now it's epidemic. It's out of control. So that should tell you your government might as well put a little bit of a different symbol on their flag, because these are the people they're allowing to come in. The media is quiet about, and they're not talking about it. And like what just happened in Colorado, it's sound bites and video clips is what they're giving you. They're hiding the truth behind it. Now, I had warned earlier on earlier episodes, and if you're a new subscriber, I do urge you to please go through some of my earlier episodes. I have broke a lot of great stories. And like I say, I push the edge. I always have and I always will. I actually was warning that this is escalating, and it's going to allow people to think that they are able to get away with more and more every day. The terminology is called enabling. And we have an enablist government, and this is what they do. The more you allow these protests to scream and get away with hate crimes without any justice being served on them, the further they will go. You give them an inch, they will take a mile. And lo and behold, it wasn't 3 days after I did a good 2.5-minute rant on one of my episodes about it, we had 2 people de-lifed down in Washington. And now Colorado. And now we're seeing more in Canada, more brazen every day, because we have a completely useless and incompetent government who has tied the hands through not only who they appoint as the leaders of these organizations, your policing systems, RCMP, but they have cemented the inability of these officers to do their job through legislation, which Carney could have changed, and the opposition would have all voted in favor for it. The first day back, they could have actually said, we're going to repeal this bill, and no. Crickets. It's the same government. Nothing has changed. It's lipstick on a pig. Elect a Carney, expect a circus. This is where we're at. Now watch carefully. You will see this guy is recording this.
Gas tanks. Seconds later, the police
right there. He's recording it. He's literally recording it.
And enter with what appears to be gas tanks. Seconds later.
Boom! Right there. Got his phone out. Why? Why is he recording it? So in other words, this wasn't a crime. This was a purposeful attempt to cause harm for reason. Whatever reason they deem fit. More than likely, anti-Semitic. Just looking at them and how their faces are masked and what they're actually trying to do. This is the big T word. Yes. Scary.
The place goes up in flames. The group runs. At least one is on fire.
Good thing. I hope he really feels the pain for the rest of his life for what he just did. Scary. This is just because our criminal system won't punish them properly. Unbelievable.
Early this morning, a man, 18 years old, showed up at the hospital very badly injured. He was burnt on his body.
Montreal police say that person was arrested and could face charges in connection with the fire. Police say they received several 911 calls at 4 in the morning about a suspected break-in on St. Pierre Street near St. Paul. Officers arrived at the scene and used an extinguisher to put out the fire. Simon Massalia asked that we don't show his face out of fear of retaliation. He owns Micro Espresso, the cafe torched Friday morning.
Ours is definitely burnt to a crisp, and it's going to need a lot of work to rebuild.
Massalia says he doesn't think he was the intended target. He adds he has never been approached for protection, and this was definitely not part of his Canadian dream.
Coming here, I wasn't expecting this type of low life stuff. Like this is like, you see this stuff in Puglia, you see this stuff in south of Italy where they'll put a bomb in your shop and blow it up.
2 doors down from the cafe is the entrance to Flygen. The restaurant and bar is operated by A5 Hospitality, a well-known organization in the restaurant and nightlife industry.
We don't know exactly yet, was it the bar at the corner or the cafe that was targeted.
On the South Shore, Madame Bovary, another A5 restaurant, was targeted by fire around the same time. Longueuil police say it was intentionally set. These fires come a day after a home on Nuns Island was targeted by gunfire for the second time in a month. Records show the home is owned by one of the co-founders of A5. Montreal police say it's too soon to say if any of these events are linked, but the investigation continues.
Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. On to Canada Post.
And Canada's oldest department store has officially shut its doors.
Or sorry, the Bay. My bad.
I'm really sad about it. And actually, as I was standing inside, 2 kids walked in. It must have been 13. And one of them turns to his friend and says, "Oh, this reminds me of my childhood. They're closing." And I was like, "Oh, someone give me a Kleenex box."
Hudson's Bay has been liquidating its assets since filing for creditor protection in March, with shoppers spending the last couple months looking for discounts. Canadian Tire is hoping to acquire the Bay's intellectual property, including the iconic stripes and logo. A billionaire from BC also plans to take over 28 of the Bay's building leases, but that is pending court approval.
This is sad. This is, if anything could ever be a better description of where Canada is, this is it. Canada, ask anybody, ask any Canadian that I know of anyways. There are a few out there that live in bubbles, obviously, because we got a Liberal government voted in again, but for the most part, everybody that I know and everybody that I talk to and all of the people who communicate to me via all of the different platforms I'm on have all said this is not the Canada they grew up in. And for the immigrants that have come across that I know, and again, follow me on social media, they have said this isn't the Canada that they thought they were coming to. They were hoping to be part of this Canadian dream, this identity of love, of success, quality of life through work and pride, and it's not there. And this shows, like, this is just a perfect prime example. Everybody's running in and picking apart the bones of what's left of this nation. Goodbye, Hudson's Bay, and Canada isn't far behind. Very, very sad. Now we're going to get to Canada Post.
There's been another setback in the ongoing labor dispute between Canada Post and its workers' union. Yesterday, Canada Post rejected a proposal from the Canadian Union of Postal Workers to send their dispute to binding arbitration. It follows a request from the Crown Corporation to have the Jobs Minister step in and force unionized employees to vote on its latest contract offer.
Arbitration is a long, drawn-out, and very legal process. It would leave our employees still without a contract. But more importantly, it sidelines their right to vote and puts their voice to the side.
We're still able to bargain. That's not going on right now. But no one's walked away at this point.
The union has been in a legal strike position since May 23rd, but so far has opted for an overtime ban instead.
Now, this is really sad, and it sounds like Via Rail is ready to strike as well. This was all kind of forced, hushed up before the election. Nobody talked about it. Well, none of the mainstream media brought any of this up during the election because they were propping their free money government from your tax-paying dollars to keep them afloat. So I always say, please like, share, and subscribe, and not just me, other great independent media outlets that are out there. And I'm not talking about these clickbaiters, these people who just go on and they scroll through and they just click all the stuff that they see off of X, and they don't really research, or it's just kind of, yeah. Support the real people, the people who are going out of their way to try and find the stories, to put them out there, and especially the ones who are on the edge, or like even a little bit pushing further than the edge, because there are others out there that are even more hardcore than me. They're willing to go that extra mile. Now, for the most part, those people have a larger viewership and subscribership, which gives them the ability to get past the algorithms, because they have enough of a base to help constantly share, like, and promote that type of a channel. I'm not there yet, and I would sure appreciate all the help I can get from all of you out there. Now, this is a very scary thing. We're going to go over it, and then I'm just going to kind of break it down just really quickly.
Down. A new report from the Building Industry and Land Development Association found that in April, new home sales in the Greater Toronto Area declined by 72% year over year. Nationwide, the Canadian Real Estate Association found that total home sales decreased by nearly 10% over the same time period. So for more on what's behind those lagging sales, we're joined in studio by Dave Wilkes. He's president and CEO of the Building Industry and Land Development Association. Good to have you in studio. We've seen you before remotely, so good to have you here.
It's much better to do it this way. Good morning.
I agree. Thanks for coming in. Listen, your report found that new home sales in the GTA have dropped for the last 7 months in a row. That's worse than the historic lows from back in the 90s, so like 3 decades ago. What's driving the decline?
Yeah, you're exactly right. We've seen historic lows. They're at 85% of the 10-year average. There's two factors that are driving that decline. One is consumer confidence. I mean, it's no surprise to anybody. We're in a period of turmoil, tariffs, etc., and people are just sitting on the sidelines waiting to see when that resolves itself.
Yeah.
But it will. At some point in time, it will resolve itself. More fundamentally, we have a cost-to-build crisis, which is a structural problem where
Okay, so I'm going to dispute the first thing he said and put it into layman's terms. People can't afford it. They're not sitting on the sidelines. There was already a huge scare. And because there were so few homes on the market already, due to what his second point is going to be here, and then you have people like the turd, Governor Turd, going out saying, oh, now go get it now. Interest rates are an all-time low, and they're not going anywhere. We're going to make sure they stay low, blah, 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 blah. And everybody raced out, and they were jumping, and they were buying, and then all of a sudden the interest rates skyrocketed because the turd and all of the other people who were sitting helping him in the Liberal Party kept spending and spending, creating the inflationary problem we have today. Add that to this insanity, green zealotism of carbon taxing, which just dominoed the inflation out of control. That we are trying to, the Bank of Canada is trying to hold back with its reins, and they can go ahead and they can knock it down all they want, but they can't stop the inflationary escalator that we're on, because we have printed so much money. And yes, the media will turn around and say, I've got experts saying that we didn't actually print money. You printed money. You literally printed money. You gave it out. It's just you called it a different name, and you allowed certain favored companies to be able to buy that money and hold it and then sell it back at an inflated price, so they make billions of dollars off of our debt, leaving them filthy rich and us to carry the burden as inflation, like I said, skyrockets. So now you have people who are up for renewal, and this has already been going on for a year and a half. People are walking away from their homes. I lived through this after the first turd, the first heavy socialist, Pierre Sr. Pierre the Elliott, Trudeau. This is a housing bubble created on purpose for the wealthy and for investors by the Liberal Party, by the person who was taking credit for Harper, that Harper settled right away and said, no, Carney did absolute crap when he was the governor of the Bank of England, or of Canada back then. It was our finance minister at the time, God rest his soul, he was incredible. And it was Harper who did it. And they knew how to stop it. And we were the most successful country globally during that 2008 and 9 period. Everybody else suffered major losses. Their housing bubbles blew. People lost their shirts. Major corporations walked in and they bought up the market. This is what they're waiting for. The elite buzzards have set Canada up with the help of the Liberal Party and their incompetence via wittingly or unwittingly. I would think wittingly, because you have Carney who's been helping the Liberal, guiding them for the last 5 years, sitting on the sidelines for the last 10 years, obviously throwing echoes and whispers in the ears of these people. And here we are. Now, nobody can afford a home. Those who can are afraid to buy a home. Why would you spend that $1.2 million if you know you can pick up the house in 6 months to a year for half that cost? People are already trying to walk away, and they're selling their houses at 10, 15, 20, 25% less than they paid for them 3 years ago, because they know a renewal's coming up. They can't afford it. So they've got $1 million home, they're letting go for $800,000. They're taking a loss. They're going to carry that loss, and they're going to take years to pay it off. And what's our government doing? They're going to make Canada the largest trailer park in the world. Yes, modular homes, trailer park. These houses have a life expectancy of like 18 to 30 years. They are shite. They can say whatever they want. They are trailers. Now, I have nothing against trailers. They are a great way for, especially during times of housing crises, for people a cheap way for them to purchase a residence and slowly save up money, so that when they go to buy another house, they then sell off that trailer and then they've upgraded into an actual home. Yard, basement, quiet street, safe neighborhood. Not like what we're seeing in the last 10 years, where they've been building houses where you can't even open your kitchen window because you're looking into the exact mirrored image of your house, except for the opposite side into somebody's bathroom or bedroom. The same houses, cookie cutters on these little wee lots. We have more land. There's more land in Canada per capita than anywhere else in the world. Why are they building these yards that you can't even put a garden in? It's over-regulation, over-taxation. It's all about money. And the cities have been forced to do it because of the amount of taxes that they need to pay and the losses through all of the different regulations all the way up from provincial to federal. We are so taxed, we are so regulated that it's crushed the actual ability for us to be Canadians. And this is the next step. So we went from big, beautiful yards to modest homes to the exact downgrade of modest homes to no yards, and now it's going to be modular trailer park homes with no yards. And it sounds as though they're literally going to do the trailer park thing where you may own the home, but you're going to pay a lot fee. That's trailer parks, people. That's trailer parks. So you won't even own the lot your house is on. And I mean, we live in Canada, so if you think you actually own your home, try not paying taxes on that for a year or two and see how, if you really own your home. This is Canada. It's a socialist country. You don't own your home. They'll tax you to the day you lay down in your grave. And even then, they'll tax your casket. They will tax you right on every last spent dollar to put you in the ground. This is Canada. Absolutely crazy. Now, we'll get on to the second point, which he's actually correct on.
The amount of costs and inputs that go into building a new home or a new condo just are too high for a level for the market to absorb, and that's particularly on the high-rise side.
Yeah, and when we talk about the housing industry, so there's the market side of it, which ebbs and flows, but on the industry side of it, how are they adapting to the slowdown?
Right, so without sales, you're not going to have starts. And so last week we saw a number of layoffs within the housing industry, a key economic driver of the economy across the country, but certainly in large urban centers. And from a consumer point of view, if you're not selling product, you're not being able to build it. And so we look forward, in the GTA, for example, in 2027 and 28, we're going to see even less housing coming on market, and it's going to increase the affordability challenges that we're all facing.
Yeah, well, and then this is the problem, right? We've got this desire and this need to build. We've got the cost that it's too expensive, and there in the middle lies where the real tension point is. So Prime Minister Mark Carney made housing as a central point of his campaign. You saw a lot of this. It included a pledge to double the rate of home building to 500,000 homes per year within a decade. So how does that square with what you were just outlining is the cost of building?
Right, so
within a decade, as if this...
There's a number of things that we believe the Prime Minister and the provincial premiers can do. One in particular is take a look at GST, a PST, or a combined HST. It was first introduced on new homes in 1991, and at that time, 95% of the homes that were built didn't pay, at the time, GST. And there was a pledge that rate, that 450,000 below which above which you don't pay GST, will be updated every 2 years. That hasn't happened.
Of course not.
That's a key factor, and there's been a lot of conversation on it, which we are welcome the focus, but we need that needs to move quickly.
Well, quickly is a key word, because your organization is warning it's going to take years before buyers feel the shock of what's actually happening in the housing market. First of all, how will they feel that? Where are they going to notice it?
There's just not going to be housing delivered. New home sales, as I indicated, we're going to see a shortage of deliveries in 2027 and 28. If you simply updated the GST, if you took it to $1 million threshold, which is what we would suggest that it would be based on inflation over the last 34 years, allowed it to apply to all new homes and those homes that are substantially renovated, that would be a $106,000 saving on a new home. We really believe that would address the cost to build that we've talked about and get the industry back working and delivering homes for Canadians that want to live in our large urban centers and elsewhere.
So the GST is the big one. It's sort of the first move.
GST, PST, we welcomed Premier Ford in Ontario, came forward and said that they would move if the federal government did. So we think there's a tremendous momentum here. We got to get it right, though. Yeah. It's got to apply to all new home purchasers and those substantially renovating homes. And it's got to be at a threshold that makes sense. And we're suggesting the first $1 million.
See, now this is just the crack pipe clean out. So only new homes and substantially renovated homes. Why not all homes? Why do they have to be substantially renovated? Why not free up the entire market? Because it's a socialist government. They need those tax dollars to keep sending to places like Ukraine and Nigeria and all the rest of this, we gotta support the whole world off of our backs. In the meantime, we're watching our entire market collapse. It's just such backwards thinking. Man, these people, it's so frustrating. And then who's gonna be the one to say, oh, well, what do you call a renovated? Renovated in what way? So a new rug, does that cut it? No, it'll end up being a huge variety of things that need to be done. They will all have to be calculated, billed so they can be taxed, and then after a certain amount of criteria, you can sell it. So somebody who actually buys a house to flip it themselves, that goes in and renovates it, won't be able to do it unless he hires all of that out through third parties so that the government can collect a tax on a tax on a tax on a tax on a tax, and then say, okay, now since we've made enough tax off it, it falls into this threshold, and we're going to eliminate, we'll take the GST off. This is incompetence at the highest level. Insanity. Moving on.
An autopsy is scheduled for tomorrow after a body was found inside a burning home early Sunday morning. Fire was reported in the second floor of this house on 120th Avenue and 77th Street around 2 in the morning yesterday. The firefighters discovered the body inside the home and called police. Most of the top level was destroyed by flames. A next-door neighbor says she did not think anyone was living there.
I was kind of shaky for a while after we got back in last night. I think the fire started at 2 or 2:30, and we weren't back in bed till like 4:30 because just staying up and making sure everything was okay, having a cup of tea.
She says her family could feel the heat from the flames coming through the wall of their house. Some of their siding is melted. The EPS homicide section is now in charge of this investigation.
Scary times. Scary times. Moving along. Alberta and BC at odds. EB fled the country. He didn't want to be there. He didn't want to be seated. Instead, he sent his so-called deputy. And she's just as bad. BC, you got to get your crap together. Really. I know that a lot of people from BC, northern and eastern BC, want out. They want out like Saskatchewan and Alberta. They're done. And I really hope this gets a lot of running ground and comes to fruition, because this is just ridiculous that we can't become the great nation that we should have been 60 years ago, let alone where we are today. It's just crazy.
I think that there seems to be an appetite to talk about getting pipelines built so that we can get oil and gas to market. The problem is, unless we address the 9 terrible policies that have damaged investor confidence, we're not going to get the proponents coming forward with major investments. So I think it's got to be a 2-track process. Let's get the commitment that we are going to build a new pipeline, and then I'll have to work with the Prime Minister to make sure that we can repeal or significantly amend the policies. Having an energy corridor to northern British Columbia that includes a bitumen pipeline would be a good first step in the communique. Understanding that we won't get a serious proponent from the private sector unless we address those underlying conditions. It's the reason why the federal government had to step in the first time when there were no proponents willing to take forward Trans Mountain. If we're going to continue building pipelines, we have to change the environment. And I've made that point very clear to the Prime Minister, and I'm looking forward to working with him and his energy minister to see how quickly we can address those underlying factors.
We understand that Premier Smith is advocating for the interests of her province, and we'll be doing the same here today. And although we have differences of opinion with respect to that, we're focused on where we can find alignment. I'm really looking forward to the discussion today where we can find those key ways that we can move things forward together. With particularly in that project, there's no proponent at this stage. We're going to be focused on really shovel-ready projects in BC.
And this is what they do, and this is what the media has been doing, this whole proponents thing. Nobody will come in and invest when they can't even guarantee a project will get finished, let alone all of the hurdles and the costs of jumping those hurdles due to a company. Why would you? This is what they're... And the media hides this, and this is the reality of what's going on, and it's not just the oil sector, the oil and gas. This is why housing is at just an insanity. This is why businesses are fleeing. It's because of the tax base and the regulatory just insanity within our nation. this green zealotism, like this idiot and her EB boss. These people, I'm telling you, that BC, they got to stop handing out free drugs because these people they're way too loaded to be leading a province in some hypothetical dream world while everybody lives in poverty and the separation between the rich and poor just keeps getting further and further and further apart, which, by the way, after these governments being in power for as long as they have, is the largest separation between rich and poor in history.
That we can bring forward that we know will have a really solid impact on the economy and will help us work together with our neighbors. We're all facing the same threat of the tariffs and Trump, and we appreciate Prime Minister Carney's vision of one economy and one Canada, and that means that we have to find ways to work together even though there are differences of opinion.
Yeah, which they just keep refusing to do. They just keep refusing to do. Moving along.
Patients, but they say they're being forgotten in Health Minister Christian Dubé's new bill. Bill 106 classifies patients using a color code system. Most youth are considered green, meaning they're coded as healthy patients. But Quebec's Association of Pediatricians says that's misguided. They say children depend on others to express their needs and access care as their bodies change. Pediatricians argue they should be classified as orange or yellow or more vulnerable patients so they can receive quality care. The association says it is especially important because a growing number of young people are struggling with their mental health.
Since COVID, we know for a fact that this has deteriorated greatly in all of our pediatric population, but also very much so in adolescent patients. And so if we keep going in this direction and that the Proposition 106 does not take better consideration of the children and the adolescents and how care will be organized and promoted, then we are afraid that this will just keep getting worse. So we really have a population where the needs are becoming bigger.
And Health Minister Christian Dubé is defending Bill 106 in a new social media video.
Il y a trop de Québécois qui attendent pour une prise en charge par un médecin de famille.
Dubé said there are too many Quebecers waiting for a family doctor and goes on to say this bill will allow Quebecers to have access to health care professionals by the summer of 2026. Bill 106 would link up to 25% of physicians' pay to their performance. The video published early today comes after doctors slammed Dubé at hearings on Bill 106 last week in Quebec City. They say if they have to double their patient load, it will lead to poor quality medicine.
It just seems like every time these people are putting bills in, for all the good they do, they'll take 2 steps forward, 9 steps back. And I totally agree with how the pediatricians are coming forward on this. Why would you not exempt the kids from this and always keep the kids as a first priority? It just doesn't make any. Some of these politicians, I tell you, absolutely, they just don't think. Now, moving along here, pigs at a trough.
A backbencher is getting a raise of about $40,000. Ford is giving himself a raise of about $73,000. A $73,000 raise, which is like more than what the average Canadian worker makes in an entire year. Not to mention, folks, we just had a provincial election in Ontario. Does anyone remember Ford asking for a $73,000 raise? Or even bringing up the fact that he was going to get a $73,000 raise?
Now, it sounds like it's a 35% increase, their raises they just gave themselves. 35%.
I sure don't remember that. Okay, and now Ford's salary is going to be about $282,000 a year, and now Ontario's politicians are going to be the highest paid provincial politicians in Canada. And oh yeah, more bad news, because the piggies have more slop to take in from the trough. They're also bringing back a pension. They're going to get a taxpayer-funded platinum pension, a defined benefit pension plan. Now, you'll remember years ago, Mike Harris eliminated the pension, saving taxpayers a bunch of money, and now Ford and the rest of them want to bring back pensions for politicians. Well, you just gave yourself a 35% pay raise. Can't you save for your own retirement without relying on a platinum pension for taxpayers? And oh, by the way, Ontario's government debt is more than $400 billion.
That's what the
Why
B.
do you think you deserve a raise when you have lost control of the finances?
Because Dougie is a liberal, and they like to spend money. Now, I was going to do a couple little clips of some of the riots, but it looks like my time has run out. I try to keep these, they're already fairly long, between 45 minutes and an hour. I'm pushing it a little wee bit, but that's okay. I'm going to do my first members only video where I can actually show a lot more of what's going on in France. And I've got some crazy footage of the Ukraine and Russia and other things. Hopefully you guys join up on this membership thing. I apologize for having to do it, but if you really want the news, if you really want to see firsthand what's going on around the world and in Canada without the censorship, that's what we got to do. It's what we got to do. And believe it or not, it's not like it's a money-making scheme. It's literally the only way I could to do it, where I'm following the legalities. I'm still going to be censored. I'm still going to have to be very careful on certain things. But by ensuring that it's not a free forum, it does clear the way up of a lot of the strings that I have to make sure I stay bound by on this part, the free part of my show. Anyways, you guys, I hope you liked today's episode. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Don't forget to check out my merch. Like I said, this week I am going to be releasing a whole pile of brand new merch. I was testing the waters out. I think I'm getting this software thing figured out. So we'll see. If you like it, make sure you like it, share it, subscribe. If you are subscribed, punch that notification bell so you don't miss any future episodes. Until the next time, this is Canadian Citizen Journal. I'm Alias Tagay. Stay informed.